we may want to get him a copy of the quarterly report.
Yeah.
I think I recall back when we started the half-cent sales tax, we had what we call a strategic plan document that the commission adopted and had all the scope, cost, and timeline for all the projects laid out for the public to see. And it was projected out in terms of the available resources. So you have that kind of document now, as I understand. Anytime there was a change, we'd have a public hearing. We'd get everybody to come up and talk about it. And it wouldn't be done, if there was some kind of unknown cost increase because of a project, there would be a full discussion as early as possible on those subjects. And we tried to scope out the projects early so we didn't have to make constant changes in the projects, which if you have to make all these changes, that delays the project timeline. So I think those kinds of reforms are what I would like to see. I would like to see something that we can develop a project fully at the earliest stage and then not have to make a lot of changes as we go along, because that's what costs money and time. I remember I used to wear this button at the meeting when I chaired the authority, and it had the word change orders and had a big X through it. So people would have to come to the authority board and request change orders, and I'd wear the button and it'd say no change orders. I was kind of expressing my philosophy about making changes because we wanted to get the projects done as quickly as possible. So, yes.
Mr. Chair, just a question of staff. Could we get a copy of the commission's report?
Yeah, I think we can get the staff to get everybody a copy of it. I'll get why don't we get enough for all the senators, that including the ones that aren't here, we can pass that out. Yeah, because I think project delivery efficiency has got to be part of this. This is something that's very important to me, I think. But I'll tell you another thing. It's not something that we can just snap our fingers and all of a sudden have. We have to, this is like an ongoing working with the legislature, the governor, and the commission to make sure the project delivery is made more efficient. And we're going to have to make a commitment. If there's going to be any change, we have to make a commitment, and it's got to be more of a long-term commitment for efficiency and change, because we got to change, in some cases, culture that exists for a long time, and that takes some effort, in terms of changing those things. So if there's no other questions, we'll invite public speakers, and thank you too for coming, and I appreciate all the hard work that the commission does, and Mr. Kempton, you in particular, so thank you. Thank you very much. Let's ask for any public comments on our discussion, and please come forward. I was a chairman in those days that didn't win too many friends, but I was, I was kind of the tough guy, Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Turn off.
Okay, why don't you guys?
About that.
You can move those signs out of the way, the ones in front of you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Gus Corey here on behalf of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, Stanislaus Council of Governments, Transportation Authority Marin, and San Mateo County Transportation Authority. I'll keep my comments fairly brief. I very much appreciate the opportunity today to speak before you. Concur with many of the comments that were made by the panelists as well as the members. Just a couple of things that I think I would like the senators to consider is with respect to the STIP. The reason why the STIP is so critical is because, as was mentioned by the self-help counties, the fact that 70% of the funding comes from 20 counties, there's going to be a saturation point where these counties can't go to the ballot much more. In LA, they're talking about going for their 4th sales tax measure. Marin's talking about going for their 2nd. Alameda, Santa Clara, Contra Costa are talking about their second, and third sales tax measures, and so fourth sales tax measures. It's hard to keep track, of course. And so, but the beauty of the STIP is that the state owns the state highway system. And so you essentially have counties that have stepped up to the plate and are taxing their own constituents to take care of the state's asset. We should be leveraging the resources that those counties are bringing to the table. It's a flexible program, as you know. You could spend it on bike and pedestrian programs. I mean, our transportation infrastructure needs are not cookie cutter. If Senator McGuire was still here, he might want to have more funding go towards SMART. Senator Bell, you might want to go towards BART, for example. Maybe it's the 4 or 5 down in Southern California or the 15. And so it really gives the local jurisdictions an opportunity to leverage their resources to address our transportation infrastructure needs. So that's number one. It's not cookie cutter, it's flexible. As far as, and we could talk about the numbers, but I think the commission did a great job, and there's a list of projects that are in jeopardy. But it's more than just restoring funding for the STIP. We have to acknowledge the fact that our population continues to grow, and you can't condition people just to leave their cars and hop on public transportation, for example. And I know we're creating higher densities for housing around the state, but the rail infrastructure needs to really be improved if we're serious about getting people out of their vehicle as well. As far as solutions go, and this is just based on my personal opinion as a former Assembly Transportation Committee consultant and a longtime transportation advocate, it was taboo 10 or 12 years ago, but the vehicle license fee to me would seem to be the revenue source that would provide the most predictable, stable funding source. It's also federally tax deductible. If memory serves me correctly, it generates about $6 billion per year. You can calibrate it to where lower income people are not impacted, but essentially we have to acknowledge the fact that cars are more fuel efficient, number one. We are switching to alternative fuels. And so the VLF captures, no matter what vehicle you drive, you would have some predictable, stable funding. And Director Kempton has mentioned this ad nauseum in the past, that you can't just start and stop transportation projects. And so the volatility contributes to that problem. It costs you more money in the long run in order to address that problem. And so, as opposed to what's currently being proposed. And again, my clients, I think, would go with whatever solution is comfortable for the legislature, because we're in dire need of resources. But relying on a gas tax where last year we were an SB 350 away from having more funding eviscerated for transportation, and the fact that we're weaning ourselves off of petroleum might put us in a situation to where we're back in a couple years having to revisit why there's still a shortfall or why there's still volatility in funding our transportation infrastructure needs. And so, again, the success for some of my clients has been that they have had expenditure plans, which details the accountability that Senator Bates was referring to and the concerns that Senator Roth was raising, where that's what the public wants to know, is whatever mechanism you decide upon as far as raising revenues, where's that money going to go? And the STIP is the program, I'm telling you, not that we do need funding for local streets and roads and for the shop. That's not as sexy, but that is what is tangible to people. The dinner time conversation for many isn't always, wow, Main Street was really bumpy today. It's the 405 was so darn busy, I'm half an hour late to my appointment. So I would urge you in your further deliberations on crafting a package to consider not just restoring funding for the STIP, but increasing funding to truly address our infrastructure needs and relying on a more predictable, stable source of funding so that we're not having to revisit this conversation and we're giving the local jurisdictions and the state, which is, it's a partnership, the resources to really address our transportation infrastructure needs. Thank you so much for your time today.
Any other speakers, please?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Michael Quigley with the California Alliance for Jobs. Over the last several weeks, the Alliance for Jobs and the research department with the Northern California's Carpenters Regional Council has been doing an economic analysis of the CTC project deprogramming. I'd like to share some of those results with you today. We were just able to finalize it this morning. So I'd like to, one of the paragraphs I think is relevant here. The projects affected by the CTC's budget shortfall would have created approximately 7,600 jobs directly related to the planning, permitting, and building of vital transportation infrastructure. Approximately 5,800 of those directly created jobs would have been in construction occupations and families supporting prevailing wages with healthcare and retirement benefits. California's Public Works apprenticeship requirements would also have created workforce development pathways for persons just establishing their construction careers. Additionally, this investment would have created another 9,100 jobs in supporting industries such as suppliers, as well as those throughout the broader economy, as household spending from the directly created jobs reverberates throughout the state's economy. Taken together, the impacts of the deprogram projects are $3.1 billion in reduction in total economic output, 16,700 jobs at risk, 5,800 of them in construction occupations, $1.5 billion reduction in value-added economic activity, $1.1 billion in lost personal income, and $125 million in foregone local and state tax revenues. I'll make this information available to your staff, Chairman Bell, and I want to make the point that these are real cuts affecting real families, and as you saw from Commissioner Alvarado and Director Kempton's report, this is not something that's a one-time deal. This will continue to happen, and the legislature and the associated parties here should be encouraged to come up with a solution to this problem before it gets worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Jeannie Ward-Waller with the California Bicycle Coalition. I'll make my comments brief. I just want to support most of your speakers today in and your efforts in trying to address the funding shortfall in the STIP. We're working closely with the CTC and Caltrans to make sure that these transportation projects are achieving multiple of our state goals, including our climate and health and equity goals. And we need to make sure that those projects get funded moving forward. We're also working with the regional agencies on meeting their regional transportation planning goals, and those efforts need funding to move forward. So we encourage you to find a solution today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, there
It works.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Chanel Fletcher, and I'm with Climate Plan. I, again, want to echo, I think, the comments that you've heard today already. We work very closely on SB 375, which is really focused on creating livable, sustainable communities at the regional level, and the biggest thing that we've heard back is how much the STIP is important to that in terms of really having that funding in place, and that it's flexible to look at transit, to look at bicycles, and so I think that that's one place where we are very supportive of whatever mechanism moves forward, of making sure that we have a stable funding source for the STIP. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Justin Fanzal on behalf of MTC. First, I'd like to thank you for your proposal. We're happy and ready to go and work as hard as we have to with all the members of the legislature to find an answer to getting more funding on the table. Today seemed like the proverbial shot across the bow with the bomb coming for a direct hit very soon. We have the BOE about to hit us, the CTC about to cut the STIP. So the list of projects that are growing that we could fund, we're now looking at things, preparing a list for you of projects that are not going to be funded, that are going to be taken off of that list that the commissioner warns are once they're gone, they don't come back. It's a very scary situation for each and every one of your districts. Again, we're happy and ready and willing to do what it is we need to do in this building to get a proposal through the legislature and to the governor. Thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you very much. We heard the various sobering news that we're all faced with, and we will continue to work very hard for a solution with all members of the legislature and the governor. And I want to thank the public and the members of the Senate Transportation Housing Committee for this hearing, and we'll be adjourned. Thank you.